Hello. This is Jonathan, and you're listening to the Johnny Talks podcast, the place where we help you achieve your financial goals. Hola, amigos. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And if you're a new listener to the show, special warm welcome to you. I really appreciate you tuning into the show. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. I appreciate it even more. In today's episode, we will speak to my friend Anissa from the podcast Outrospection. Outrospection is a self-development podcast where Anissa offers various perspectives through solo shows, interviews, and inspiring stories in order for us to grow, improve ourselves, and to take action. Anissa will share her money story with us of how she changed her money script from a scarcity mindset to an abundant mindset. And she will also provide useful tips on how you can change your own money script as well. This episode is for you if even the word money stresses you out, if you feel uncomfortable about the topic, and if you are ready to make a change for yourself. So without further ado, let's hear the interview. Hello everyone, this is Jonathan. I'm here with Anissa. This is actually, for the listeners, it is an in-person interview. So glad to have you here. We've met through a community of French-speaking podcasters here in Luxembourg. And you are as well in Luxembourg. Anissa, you are actually the host of the podcast Outrospection. It's actually, most of the episodes are in French, but you also have a few episodes in English. So can you tell us a little bit about Outrospection?
Yes, sure. So first of all, thank you very much for having me in your podcast, because as you said, I do have a podcast myself, but this is actually the first time that I'm a guest. And yes, I started this podcast because I wanted to talk about self-development, but my podcast is not only about, content or exercise or things you can do to develop yourself, but it's also self-development through the perspectives of different people I interview myself, or different stories related to work, related to relationships, and even money.
Mental blocks as well.
Yes.
No, it's very interesting, and I really appreciate your episodes. We can talk a bit more about it at the end. And the reason I invited you is related to the podcast. It's about money mindsets, actually, because I've mentioned it several times on the podcast. It's that I may tell you everything about investing in the stock markets, real estate investing. We have had a few great guests on the show. Nevertheless, if your mindset is not right in the first place, all this information is basically useless, because you may have wrong expectation. You may think that if you still believe, for example, that the stock markets are dangerous, you may be right or wrong. But if you have this mindset, you will never make the steps to invest in the stock markets. Or if you think, my dad lost a lot of money by investing in real estate, then you will have a mental block towards real estate. So even if I have the best guest in the world, it will not be useful. And there's a lot of other things. For example, if you grew up in an environment where money was taboo, it will always be a difficulty to deal or talk about money in a healthy way. And so that's why I think we wanted to share at least Anissa's point of view on that. And to see where we how we can improve our money mindset, or unlock, or how you call it. So anyway, so let's start. So Anissa, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Your how was your first belief on money when you grew up?
So I grew up having, I think, a very healthy relationship with money. I was raised in a very modest family, like middle class.
You were not raised in Luxembourg, and you were French.
No. Yeah, I'm from France, actually. I grew up in France, like a big part of my life, and then I moved to different countries. But I have to admit that, my parents, they were working and they earned salaries, obviously, but that was never a lot, and I knew that from the start, but I never really felt from their, explanations that this was a problem. They were working hard and I could see that, but I didn't feel like money was creating pain, for them. So I feel like in my case, I was not seeing money as something that creates a lot of struggle.
Okay.
I could see that it could help us in some ways and sometimes restrict us because maybe we didn't have enough, but it was pretty much something healthy in my opinion.
And would you say, you don't have to answer, but would you say you were middle class, or like your parents were high earners? Just to put some context.
No, clearly middle class.
Middle class, yeah.
Yeah, my dad started like at the very, very bottom, of the different stages you can expect, when you start a job. He came to France when he was 15 and didn't really study that much. Like he had to learn French. So when he got his first job, he took the first thing someone could offer him. Okay. And after years and years, this is how he actually went to a higher position and earned more money. But initially, it was someone very technical and not someone that was doing a corporate job.
Okay, very good. So, okay, middle class, but you have good, I would say healthy attitude to money at home at least.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because, he had this sense of gratitude because he was able to get a job in a country that was not his. So I guess even if his pay was not very high, he was still very happy for the job. So this is why I could see that money was not something bad.
Okay, very good. And what about, for example, your friends at school, or in general in your social life, when you grew up, like in the teenage year as well? Was money a big deal, a big issue?
It wasn't a big issue, but I'm almost 30, so I can say that I'm from the 90s. And, during that time, money was still something. We would not talk so much about money, but you could tell who in the class had parents that could afford certain things, because at the end of the day, and I think it's still the case, but you would see people wearing certain brands and you would be like, oh, I also want, that brand. So I would ask my parents something like that. And I remember that they could not offer these type of things all the time, but they were trying at least, once a year or twice a year before school would start. But I could see that at school, some people, some kids were not really thinking about it, but you could tell, from the way they were dressing, that the parents have more mean,
Yeah. Okay. And what about your early career years? Have you seen any general trends in terms of discussions about money, or how can I say that has had an impact on you, or that you see they have negative, they have positive, or something?
I think what I always knew was that behind money, always I could tell that they could, there will be hard work. That was my mentality growing up. Yeah. And because I also had friends who didn't have to work to get pocket money, they would have parents throwing them, 50 to 100 euros per week so they could pay for their personal stuff. I think in my case, I was like, oh no, for me, this is not what money means. Money means working hard for it. So I think I grew up with this idea that to get that money, I would have to work, which wasn't the case for certain people I knew. They would just have parents. And me, I knew from a very, very early age that I would have to work. So I started very young. I was 14 and I started to do some cleaning at a women's house. And I was also ironing, everything she had, even her husband, boxers. That was, the type of thing that I would do to get money. And they would give me like 14 euros for 2 hours, something like that. And I was very happy. Because I was thinking, okay, I'm starting to become more independent, because I know I cannot really count on my parents to give me money, but I'm happy because I can create something and get money out of it. So I was happy about that. And I grew up with that, I think, idea that this is how I would need to do that in my life, to get money, to work hard, and then this is the money I get from my hard work. So that was my mentality.
Yeah, okay. And has it ever changed, or did you ever have a period where you thought, okay, no, I want to spend it all, or no, money's bad, or I don't know, has there been changes in that mentality?
I think because I was working hard, I was very protective of that money. You know, I was thinking money is rare, money is hard to get. So you have to be careful how you spend your money. So I've never been someone that was wasting money or spending money in unnecessary thing, but I wanted, you know, like I wanted to be able to buy the things I liked. I sometimes, you know, you get along with people and have maybe they earn more money than you, and you're like, oh yeah, I also want to have that type of lifestyle. I want to go to restaurant and spend money in this and that. And I could not really catch up, you know, with them because I was not able to produce that much to get that much and be able to spend that much. So it was difficult during that time because I was earning a bit more, you know, when you start having contracts and even you do small jobs and you have a bit of money. But I think I've always been very protective because I was realizing, you know, you cannot really go back to your parents and ask for more. It's just you. So if you get that money, you have to be careful and be very wise in the way you're using it. So I was a bit scared of losing money. And I think I grew up, you know, with this idea that, okay, I don't want to, you know, become homeless, or I just want to make sure that everything I earn, I can save it. So I was a bit scared, I think.
Okay, and then today you're not scared anymore, I think.
No, I have a very, very different relationship with money now.
Aha. So what made you change, or how did you come from a place of I want not hoard, but I want to have money. I mean, as you said, I want to keep it. I want to make sure I don't lose the money, to have a job. I mean, to still be able to pay and to have that security. To now, today, you say, I have changed a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not so scared anymore. So what happened?
Yeah. So I didn't change in the way that I'm not, you know, spending without thinking about how I spend my money. But I think I just became more, you know, conscious of what money means, what's the system behind money. And I somehow educated myself so I could better understand how the money could work for me. And it happened actually because I was at a stage in my life where I was not feeling happy. And I don't think this was necessarily related to money, but I think it was a mixture of different things. You know, I was working for many years, so in my field, and I was enjoying the job itself. I liked it, but I was, you know, somehow still feeling very empty. And I was like, why am I doing this? You know, what's the point of that? Because, okay, I could go out and spend money this weekend and buy myself nice things, but what does it mean? And I started, you know, a very deep work on myself, like a very, very deep introspection about, okay, what's, you know, like this type of crisis when you ask yourself, okay, what's my goal in life, you know,
what's your why?
Exactly, you know. And because I was working on myself, I started reading books I never had access to in the past, because, you know, you do something very stupid when you are asking yourself questions. You just Google things, and then you end up finding one book that talks about this and that. And I think this whole phases of my life when I was searching for answers led me to a point where I was able to really look at different areas of my life, like finance and personal finance. And this is when I realized, okay, now I need to really get myself into that, because, you know, for example, I was very, very bad at school at math. You know, I always hated math.
Okay.
I thought, this is not for me. I don't get it. I don't understand that. And, you know, I started to read books about entrepreneurs and investors, and they were talking about numbers. And I was like, oh my God, you know, like, this is not for me. And then I was reading more and more and more. And, you know, they made it very concrete and very accessible. So I could understand now how numbers would apply, you know, to your life and to your bank accounts. And this is when I realized, okay, you know, your bank accounts it's like your mini company. You know, you have to look at how you spend money, what you do with the money you earn. Because I was thinking in my head, what's what's going to be the next step? Are you going to search for more? Are you going to ask for more? Is it more money that you want? And, because that's what everybody wants. Or maybe what we think we all want. Oh, I want more money. And then I realized, no, actually, I want better money. It's not more than I need, it's better.
Oh, I like that.
I think this really changed my perspective in my life. And because I was starting to learn new things, I just kept going with that. More content, more books, more video that I was watching on that topic.
No, very interesting, Anissa, because I think we had a similar discussion with the previous guest, Dimitri, about chasing the horizon, because you can always trying to look at making more.
Yeah.
But okay, what is enough? It's never enough.
Exactly.
Because you can make 100,000, 200,000, maybe even go to 1 million.
Yeah.
But then what? Okay, well, what's the end goal?
Yeah.
And then you just make more, not better money. So I like that what you said there. And so you mentioned a few resources, books, etc. Were there any particular books or resources that you found helpful? For example, with the math, just that maybe.
Oh God! So I didn't go back to math classes to see what I had missed, but I have to admit that the first book I ever read about that topic was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is more like a classic, But this was my first introduction to somehow personal finance, because the book is, a lot of people have read it. And, first of all, when I saw the name of it, I was not so much interested, because I was like, oh, I know this type of books, it's just so marketing. And I work in marketing, so I know exactly that effect. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get anything out of it. This is so, clickbait, Oh, okay, what about that? And I think beside the book itself, I think it's not like when I'm reading something, I never expect the book or what I'm watching to really solve and fix my problem. But I'm always consuming content thinking, okay, I'm going to take what is important to me, and I'm going to pick and choose, and I'm not going to just read something and try to think that I can apply the whole book to my life. So this book, I don't know, I think it's just the fact that I understand the concept of active, passive assets made a huge difference to my life. And this changed, this little program I had in my head, from my education, from my parents, that said, go to school, do long studies, work hard, buy a house, get married, and, buy a nice car. And, this book is actually telling you the complete opposite, and says that something that your parents would not tell you. So I think in that sense, this is how I started, reconsidering and questioning my beliefs.
No, I've read it as well a few years ago. I think it's I always have my reserves as well with the Kiyosaki in the marketing way, and as well there's some I have some reserves on his definition of active and passive. Nevertheless, it's a really great book for the mindset. As you mentioned, honestly, I can recommend it with some caution.
Yeah, no, sure.
But
and any book, actually, anything you read, and even this podcast.
Listen or view with caution as well. We are not financial advisor or anything.
Obviously,
But we are doing our best as well to give great value and share stories, of course. But so then we are there, and then this is how you started then to change your mentality, your view on money, your approach. So how has this been translated? Are you now investing in the stock market? Are you saving more money? What are you just concretely in your everyday life? What are the changes?
A few things. I started looking at my expenses, I had to look at myself, straight and be clear about how I spend my money, because I think this is, if you consider that you're not earning enough, obviously, maybe you can change that. Maybe you can change up. Maybe you can ask for a raise. I mean, there are many ways, but you also have to look at how you spend your money, the money you get. And I was looking at my expenses, and I started realizing that maybe sometimes you spend money because you have it, and because also you don't really know what to do with that money, and you don't really know that money can be used in different ways. So I think I reduce unnecessary expenses. I still do a lot of things that makes me happy, like I'm not saying that I have reduced or completely removed everything in my life, but unnecessary things for sure. And I look at my bank accounts and I was really tracking things. So maybe this is not funny for some people to do, but me, it helped me. I've never, as I said before, never spent money in crazy stuff, or never been, in my bank accounts at zero, because I was so stressed. I told you I was very protective of money, and I didn't want to be in that red, area. But I have to admit that, looking and tracking made me realize, oh my God, how much do I spend in that? You go out, you have drinks, you go to a restaurant, you buy yourself clothes and stuff, and then you realize that this is some money that you're actually spending. And I was just questioning myself, okay, what's my comfort zone? What do I need to be happy? So I started realizing that I was able to save some money. So I've been very, cautious about that. Having Excel, file where I was tracking everything for, I think, probably 2 years. And after that, I didn't need it anymore. It was just like a habit. So I knew how much I could save and so on. And I think the second big thing I did was to take actions, because I realized, okay, I am in my late 20s. I probably have the ability now to invest, some money that I'm saving. And I want to keep my bank accounts very clear so I can maybe, loan money and maybe invest in properties and, earn that money through my rents, and I think this is the first thing I started to do, is to train myself, because again, I'm still very scared about money, scared of investing, like even 10 grand. I was like, oh my God, like 10,000 euros. Can you imagine, what it means in terms of work, in terms of, time? And I was just thinking that, okay, now that I had unlocked certain things in my mind, I was able maybe to accept that I needed to educate myself and to just follow courses, take on classes on real estate, investment, understand, what's behind that, what is behind that business, until I reached a point where I was able to say, okay, enough, learning. Now I need practicing. And I think that was like the third step, like it's okay. Now I know how money works, to keep my bank account clear. And I've trained myself, and now I need to practice.
Okay, no, very good. And then one question that I'm thinking about is that, okay, we both live in Luxembourg. For those who don't know, it's a tiny country, but it's a financial center in Europe, which means that there are many people with good salaries, good living, good comfort, good lifestyles that can afford all of those things we also like the restaurants, the clothing, the whatever. And I was wondering, okay, there's people, middle class, high class, everything, but in general, Luxembourg has this image of, people can afford what they want and they drive a nice SUVs, which I don't. But okay, I was wondering, Anissa, then, do you have any particular observation on the money mindset in Luxembourg, maybe? Any thoughts?
That's a tricky one. I have to admit that, before coming to Luxembourg, I was living in Australia before. And, Australia is obviously very different from Europe, very different from Luxembourg. But that was one thing that I liked there. And it was not related to money, even though people were still spending a lot of money on leisures and restaurants and drinks and stuff. But it was leave the moment and invest in your mental health and in yourself. And that was very, very present, in Australia. So when I arrived in Luxembourg and I see that people here could afford so many different things and were spending that money in materialistic things, this is where I felt like, okay, maybe I don't fit here and so much, because I couldn't really tell, but I was thinking, what's going on here? Why do people feel that need of showing up, their success, showing that, they have a good job and they can afford these and that. And I think even though this country is great and, it's at the center of Europe, so they are very, very connected with many different countries, and that's something I think we can give credit Luxembourg to, like that. They still have somehow, and some people, this mentality that you have to prove yourself to others. And I think money is actually a good tool for them to prove themselves to others and to get that external approval from people, because, they probably grew up and they probably know like a big part of people who are working there, and they just want to make sure they are not losing it. They are on top of their game and they were able to make something good. And in my opinion, I understand, that this bubble can create such behaviors, but I also want to believe that it's also possible to break that mold and to break that beliefs that because you're born in Luxembourg and because all your friends can afford this flashy car and have this great job, that you can also decide to become someone else. You can also decide to become entrepreneur, which is not something that is very easy to do in Luxembourg. When you have that stability and that you can also work for the government, people don't really choose that path. All the risky ones are not that popular here. But I believe this is possible.
No, I was asking because before I moved to Luxembourg, I lived in Norway. So in Oslo, it's a bit a similar attitude because it's a good living, it's good condition, a bit like in Luxembourg. And then people also have this mentality about, look, I'm doing well for myself, I'm climbing the corporate ladder, or I'm having a great company. So I can afford a Tesla. I mean, I've never seen so many Tesla as in Oslo.
Okay.
So Tesla for me, it's I've seen so many of them. Anyway, but people, they have this standard. I have a second house in the woods. I have in the mountains. I have a Tesla. I can even maybe afford a boat, and it becomes a competition. So that's So I can see some of that here too. So that's why
I have to admit this is true. To my friends or the people I know here, sometimes they also complain about that, but a part of the of the thing.
Exactly. And then one other thing before we close is that I wanted to ask you about maybe people. I don't know if your listeners. They have some limiting beliefs about money. Obviously, you grew up in an environment which was, in a way, healthy because money was seen as a way to. Your parents were grateful, and money was not a big deal at home. But I know that for some people in Europe, in everywhere in the world, but sometimes money is a big deal. Like, oh, money is bad. Oh, money is the root of all evil. Oh, no, we shouldn't talk money at home. Do you have any observations or comments about that? And how to go from that negative image of money to a more positive image?
I can try. At least what I can say is I was lucky because, as I said, my dad was very grateful for, being in France and being able to work and have a better life than what he could have had in his home country. But at the same time, I have to say that I still somehow have conversations with people in France who are struggling and who get jobs where they are like a very, low stages, very not well paid, and they complain. And you saw that like many months ago with all that protest and strikes in France, the
yellow vest.
Yes, that was really, 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 serious and important. And, the problem is, obviously, since things have gone to a very violent and extreme side, the message gets lost in translation, and that's a shame. But at the end of the day, what I want to say to people who thinks that, okay, money is a bad thing. If you see someone driving a Porsche, you should just ruin the car. And, is, at some point we have to understand that we are our own rescue. The governments are not going to save us. They don't have that magic power. I'm not saying that I don't have faith in governments, but I'm probably more someone that wants to create their own reality. And this is why I think if only people could know that information is accessible, they can educate themselves about money, about many different things, how to run a business. And nowadays, this is accessible, this is possible. Maybe they would not even, worry going out to ask for something to people that would not give them what they want. I just prefer to focus on the things I have control on. And because, all the retirements, all of that, all that money that we are hoping to get at some point in our lives is not guaranteed. And we have to understand that, okay, if what you promised me is not guaranteed, then I have to secure myself something.
Yeah.
So I believe that we can all do it, no matter where we're from, no matter our circumstances. It's always possible to rewrite the story. And it has to start here, like really in your head.
Yeah.
If you think you deserve better, if you think you can have better, you can go for it. And don't wait that from, don't expect the government, your parents, or your employer, to fix your situation. If you're not happy with it, just start by asking yourself questions, and Google them and make your research. But accountability, take your life, and then you will take actions.
Yeah, no, absolutely great message, Anissa. No, I think that will conclude it. Thank you for sharing your story and giving your tips. I really enjoyed it. And as you know, we always have our 3 quick fire questions at the end of the show. So are you ready?
I hope so.
Okay, very good. So we talked a little bit about it, but what is the best investment you've made so far?
I could tell you, okay, the best is maybe buying properties, which I have done,
Yeah.
But I still believe that the best part is still investing in myself, like spending time to understand how it works. And I still have so much work to do. So I'm not saying, okay, that was the best investment of myself and in myself, and that's it. But I think this is the best thing you can invest on, because everything you have or you learn, it's not something we can take you. So I believe that.
Okay, no, very good. And then we talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad, but is that the book you would recommend to anyone to read, or do you have another suggestion?
I mean, this one maybe to start with. Why not? Because it can help. But again, as we said, like being very cautious in everything you read or see anywhere. I've read since different books about personal finance or like the Millionaire Highway, stuff like that I liked. I know that sometimes I also connect with very controversial content, with content creators that have this, vibe that you either like or hate. But I somehow find, the balance. So that was the case for this book I had in mind. But I think one that I started with that I liked, not so much connected with finance, but it was the Miracle Morning, helped me at some point in my life, get, to the right path, because I was starting or searching for answers, and it helped me.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And then the last one, what is a purchase for under 100 euros that you would recommend to anyone? Something that helps you? I don't know.
Maybe not a good one. I mean, I don't know if it's something I would recommend. It's just very related to my activity. But I have this podcast, which is for now a side project. But I have to admit that I invested for good microphones, for example, because we know that audio is very important when it comes to just listening to an audio podcast, not even watching it. So I don't know if I recommend it, but I mean, I was happy because I started with a very, very basic audio gear. I did not invest at first. I wanted to see if I liked it.
Yeah.
And because I reached that point where I was enjoying myself so much, then I just decided to indulge myself in buying more, experienced microphones and more expensive ones.
Okay, very good, very good. So, Anissa, we talked about your podcast. So, where can people find you? It's Autorospection.
Yeah. So, like you, they can find me on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So, the name is Autorospection, a little bit like introspection, but Autorospection. And I have a website called autorospection.lu. LU stands for Luxembourg. And as you said at first, my content is mainly in French because my audience is mainly French speakers, but I do episodes from time to time in English, and I do have some episodes in English already. It's just that I need more support, I think. If I get people, to support me and say, do more English content, then I'll do it.
Okay, very good, very good. Excellent. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope my very modest feedback can help anyone.
Okay, absolutely. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you learned something from it. I certainly appreciated Anissa's humility when she mentioned that money is still a topic that scares her in a way, even though she managed to go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Yeah, I really appreciate this honesty, and it's something that shines through in her podcast as well. Yeah, because this mindset shift, it does not happen overnight. It's a whole process in the end. Anyway, before we head off, let's go through the key takeaways for today. Number 1, money scripts is something that is formed during childhood. For Anissa, for example, it was money equals hard work. I'm afraid of losing it. And on that note, if you want to know more about money scripts and where they come from, I recommend you listen to our episode with Derek. It's episode 46. It's brilliant. He's a financial therapist, and we go through the concept more in details. Number 2, by going through the deep work on yourself, introspection, asking yourself questions, you will become more conscious about what money means to you, and it will help you to make better money and not necessarily more money. Number 3, here are a few actionable tips. So number 1, track your expenses, even if it's not a funny activity for you, and be more intentional about how you want to spend your money. This will help you, for example, to reduce unnecessary expenses. Over the long haul, your spending pattern will become a habit. Number 2, get educated. Read, listen to podcasts, train yourself through courses. Number 3, take action. In the end, at some point, you need to leave the courses, the books, and go out there and practice what you learned. Next, on living in a bubble, in like Luxembourg, where people make good money and good salaries, in those areas, money can be a good tool to prove yourself to others for external validation, but do not fall into that trap. It leads to nowhere. And last but not least, I will end up with Anissa's message on money for all of us. Start by asking yourself questions, do your research, take action, and create your own reality. As an example, your retirement money is not guaranteed, so create your own reality by focusing on what you can control. Creating a passive income stream through investing in real estate, for example. So that was it for today. Thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. Make sure you subscribe in Apple Podcast. And of course, please do not hesitate to contact me. If you have any questions or feedback, send me an email, john@johnnytalks.com, or connect through social media at Johnny Talks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And amigos, once more, thanks so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.